nice to have you here today with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Could you please introduce yourself to our audience so they start to know you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Travin Keith. Currently Chief Technology Officer of Consortio Group. I've been in the crypto space for quite a while. Been working full-time since 2016. Been involved in a lot of projects. Pretty much just said yes to a lot of things early on because I wanted to learn more. So I've worked with the NXT Foundation and then co-authored the white paper actually of Hyperledger and advisor to Smart Cash and been this new project called Sora. And yeah, just been kind of like going around the Bitcoin space and cryptocurrency space, going around speaking at events, usually informational topics. Yesterday I talked about immigration, so this is the first time I talked about something else about crypto. Yeah, I do quite a lot of things.
Could you briefly, sorry for interrupting you.
Sure, no, it's problem.
Could you briefly retell what was your presentation about yesterday?
Sure, it was about the dehumanizing effects of the current legal immigration systems around the world. I know they're not all equal, some are better than others, but as somebody who's lived in many countries, having to go through so many visa application processes, and as a Philippine passport holder, which is not the best passport to travel around with, I just talked about how you're reduced to kind of like this number. You as an individual don't matter as much as the country you were born in. I get questioned quite a lot and stuff like that, so I brought up a lot of examples where, I go in front of this immigration official, and this happens so many times now, where this person has the power to determine my future. And based on, incomplete information and they could have, certain prejudices, like there's a lot of illegal immigration from the Philippines, so it's, we don't have the most positive reputation.
When did you leave your country and how did you manage to do that?
So I left in 2009. I was quite fortunate enough to be able to go study in the United States for university. I applied to the University of Washington as well as other universities in 2008. Got accepted and went there in 2009. So my way of leaving the country was quite different. Usually some people talk about, going for work or going with family. I went alone.
Oh, what did you study?
I studied international business. Actually, I created a focus on the United Kingdom. I wanted to do something different, so I created my own program, sort of.
And if I understand you correctly, since
Sure.
that time, you have never been back to Philippines?
I have, because of I needed to get certain papers for going to Austria after my US immigration attempt failed. I was only supposed to be there actually for a month or 2 months at most, but because Austrian immigration lost my birth certificate and essentially cancelled my residence permit application, and my university wouldn't be able to take me mid-term, so I had to wait another year, so I was there for a year.
I noticed that you call yourself as a digital nomad.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean for you? Could you explain?
Sure. So for me, a digital nomad is somebody who travels around, doesn't have any particular place they call home, lives around with their suitcases, and makes most of their money online, which is kind of what I do. I mean, I have legally I have a home here in the Czech Republic, so I'm not so much of a digital nomad anymore, but I still travel quite a lot. So I'd say maybe like I'm a half digital nomad now. But in the past, I was very much a digital nomad. Like I didn't own any furniture for a long time. I remember when I first bought a chair after 4 years, and it was quite special for me, which was unusual because it's just a chair.
How long have you been lived as a digital nomad?
It depends how you look at it. So it's about 4 or 5 years. Some people are very strict with the digital nomad definition, so maybe they might not count the year now. But
haven't you felt any being exhausted of this way of living?
I am very exhausted. I did not want to be a digital nomad. That was never my goal. When I left the Philippines, I wanted to have a stable life. I wanted to travel as well, but it's very different traveling and knowing that you have a home to go back to, that this is going to end at some time. Or I can extend it if I want to, but there's always a place I can go back to. I don't have that. Or, I'm sorry, I didn't have that. and it's quite tiring in your head. Maybe for the first few months it's fun, it's a nice new adventure. After a while, it gets really tiring that you have to change your address so many times. In 2014, I changed my address 4 times across 3 continents, and that was annoying. It was a nice adventure, that's for sure. But there's so many other stuff that goes around in the background, like phone bills and stuff like that, things you need to cancel, forwarding addresses to set up, and of course me with my Philippine passport, it's not the easiest to actually get the documents to move properly. So yeah, it is quite exhausting. Some other people probably can take it much longer than I do and probably enjoy it and probably do it for the rest of their life. But yeah, for me, because of the circumstances that I started becoming a digital nomad because I couldn't immigrate to the United States, it's very different.
Could you describe what is the current landscape or geopolitical landscape in Philippines when it comes to freedom of speech, when it comes to financial, for example, privacy, and etc.?
Sure. So freedom of speech, it's a very difficult topic to discuss. A lot of people consider Republic Act 10175 to be quite restrictive on what people can say online because of the part about libel. And there's a certain definition in the Philippines with regards to libel that isn't very concrete. It depends on the person who's receiving it. So it's very open to people being concerned. It's understanding rather that people are concerned with what they say online, whether it can be taken the wrong way. But this hasn't stopped many people from talking. So I think it's still there, but obviously it's a cause for concern, because if there's something that somebody says that's a bit too much, or that another person thinks is too much, then the law can possibly be enacted against them.
Then what consequences might it have for people who are brave to criticize, for example, the government on social media platform?
I think it was like 3 to 5 years imprisonment, possibly. That was what it was before the repeal. It was enacted in 2012, 2011, I'm not sure the exact year. But in 2014 there was some modifications, and I don't remember if the prison statement was modified, but last time I heard it was 3 to 5 years. There might have been a fine as well. Obviously I don't think that that's after, hopefully, a proper trial. But that's specific to online stuff. There's other laws also about, of course, when people talk on press and things like that. There's a lot of news that goes around just from people talking to each other still in the Philippines. A lot of people do read a newspaper as well. But for example, me, I grew up in Cebu City. We don't speak Tagalog or Filipino there. So a lot of the Tagalog Filipino news, a lot of us can actually understand the language, but it's not our language of choice. And I think there were only 2 newspapers that wrote in our language. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the information that people really got was just from talking with each other. So.
When it comes also to freedom of speech, what kind of censorship obstacles do you have?
So other than the Republic Act that I mentioned, I think there's also like a bit of a social restriction, because it's a very collectivist culture in the Philippines. It's a very Catholic country, and if you tend to move away and have different opinions about something, you can have people will immediately, not everybody, but some people will immediately discredit you just because you're not Catholic. So for me, if it's a foreigner, they might be like, okay, fine, if they're not Catholic, but for me as a Filipino who's not Catholic, I'm an agnostic, atheist person, I expect a lot of people to judge me already just by that, and then they would take anything I say as, not as reliable just because of that thing. So, yes, I'm still able to talk, but they're not listening to what I say anymore. So it's, I still have the freedom of speech, but they're not being heard.
Could you tell us how did you become familiar with cryptocurrency? Because I guess as a digital nomad, having that things, having cryptocurrency might make your life easier?
Yes, sure. So I found out about Bitcoin in 2011. A coworker of mine back when I was working in tech support said, "Hey Travin, you're in business and tech. You should look at this thing called Bitcoin." And I asked, "Oh, what is it? It's a digital currency online." And he tells me that, "Oh, you can use it on Silk Road." And I find out what Silk Road is, and like, okay, I'm trying to immigrate to the United States at the time. I don't want any part of this. So I remember looking over his shoulder and seeing $3 and just like, okay, whatever. 2 years later, in 2013, I got published in this online marketing website. I was a web marketer at the time called Search Engine Journal. I was very happy. I got published there, and I remember coming home. It was the end of November, opening up Yahoo.com and seeing Bitcoin hits $1,000, and my day just went from high to low. It's like, what happened? So I call my friend and I say, Aaron, and I just jump into it because I was like, okay, if it hit 1,000, even if this is like a little bit of a bubble, which it crashed right after, so there has to be some actual substance here. So ever since then, I've gotten quite involved, and yeah, since 2016, been doing it full time.
What's the most attracts you when it comes to Bitcoin?
It's the ability to transact with other people directly, so peer-to-peer digital cash. That's the most attractive feature to me. You asked also a while ago about for digital nomads how it can be helpful. So after the United States, I lived in Fiji. Fiji was a dictatorship. Money control was such a big thing with the government. If you were retiring in Fiji and brought money in, you could be 50% of your money would have been taken from you. You couldn't send money out, essentially. I mean, a little bit you could carry out, but if you do any bank transfers, it's quite bad. This was also really bad for a lot of the people who were working in Fiji, me, I was there, I wasn't even a resident, I was just living there for a long time because I didn't need a visa. Fiji is one of the places that allows Filipinos to do that. One of two that allow for 120 days or more. I know so many web developers there who couldn't get paid because PayPal removed their account because they were living in Fiji. You couldn't do any bank transfers to the country because of the dictatorship. Obviously, a lot of countries don't want to do that. With Bitcoin doesn't care. The transaction would still happen. Okay, just have to wait for it to be included in the block, but that's pretty much it. It doesn't matter that the person receiving it is in a dictatorship country. So that's where I saw the value of cryptocurrency.
As a person who was born in Philippines, have you ever had some difficulties to open a bank account in different countries, for example?
Yes, but that's mostly because of my unusual background. So
What do you mean?
I renewed my Philippine passport in the United States. And after that, as I mentioned, I went to Fiji, stayed in the Philippines for a year, and then I finally got to go to Austria after all of the immigration stuff was fixed. Opening a bank account took a few hours, actually, because the banker was freaking out because my passport was printed in San Francisco. And because of that, I had to be treated as an American, despite not being American. I had to sign documents that attested that I did not owe taxes to the U.S. government. Like, I'm not a resident, I'm not a citizen of the country, of course I'm not going to pay taxes to the government. So that's actually what caused a lot of the problems at the start. Eventually I moved to this country this land called Svalbard, which is northeast of Greenland. And that's a little bit of a strange place. So then when I tried to open a bank account somewhere else and they asked, what's your travel history, sometimes Svalbard wouldn't appear as one of the options. But no, usually I haven't had too many significant problems as a Filipino. Other than that, some banks don't accept Filipinos, like online banks.
Could you tell us how many people know about cryptocurrency in Philippines? Is it a popular thing?
I wouldn't be able to tell you now, unfortunately, because I haven't been there in a while. But from what I've heard, I wouldn't say it's that many people who understand it. I'm sure that a lot of people have known it now, especially it's been on the news. There's been a lot of push for it. There's this company called Coins.ph that's been really trying to make a big push with regards to the adoption of cryptocurrency there, because remittances are such a big thing in the country. But how many people actually use it, how many people are that into it, I would not put a high number to it, probably less than 5%.
According to you, does the state regulation and government surveillance increase the demand for cryptocurrency or any other privacy-oriented solutions?
It depends on the people. I mean, a lot of people today use Facebook, and they know that it's, data is being mined from them, and they continue to use it. I personally don't. But actually not for those reasons. I stopped because I was addicted to Facebook. I stopped using it about 7 years ago. But I think for some people, they want to find an escape for this because they don't like the surveillance, and then that does increase the demand, perhaps, for cryptocurrencies. I mean, here in Penalties, creating a parallel society, so people will have some people will want to move to such a society where you are not being tracked, where you're not being followed, and so cryptocurrencies could come in then. On the other side, regulations are around cryptocurrencies, as much as some people don't like it, and I certainly don't like some parts of it. It does help with adoption because a lot of people are concerned with regards to the legality of them receiving it because they want to remain in that society. They're not willing to go out, which is their own call if they make that conscious decision. For example, a business accepting cryptocurrency payments, if they're not a cryptocurrency fanatic, they would be concerned with regards to, how do I file this under my taxes? How do I deal with this in accounting? If it's regulated, then they're more comfortable in doing that. Even if they're not that into cryptocurrency, they can just say, okay, now I'm more comfortable saying, okay, I accept Bitcoin. So it sometimes helps, but of course, not all regulations are good.
You don't want to share your private data, your sensitive data with other people and also with government and corporations. What is wrong with government's attention or intervention to people's life?
Well, for me, I've given all of that up in exchange to be able to immigrate. So many countries have my fingerprints. I don't know how many times I've had to get that scanned. All of them have my birth certificate, my police records, everything. My bank statements, they know everything about me. So I've given that up, but I've given that up consciously because I wanted to migrate. For people, on the other hand, who are forced into such a system, I think that that's a little bit of a violation of their rights because it's not a contract that they signed, it's not something that they opted into, it's something that they were forced to opt into by default. And I understand that, of course, if they're like a minor, there has to be some decisions made for them. So I'm not saying that remove everything entirely. But, I think that having governments spy on their citizens and spend a lot of taxpayer money on that, it's not cheap for governments to do surveillance. I mean, in the Philippines, with 100 million people, if they would do that, I think that would take up the GDP. Just a rough estimate, but yeah, it's a poor country. So it's, on one hand, it's violating their rights in terms of being forced to be surveilled when they have not consented to be surveilled. And the other one is with regards to their taxes, about how it's used. And so something's being done to them that they don't like, and they're funding it. So that's what I see. That's kind of wrong.
If I understood you correctly, surveillance state really opens up to the more governmental control of one's life.
Yes.
But there is also the huge potential for commercial potential.
Yes.
And the example could be Target. What is your opinion on this matter?
So, I mean, again, if people choose to allow, for example, when they're using the internet, allow themselves to be followed. They choose to use a non-anonymous browser. They choose to stay logged in on Facebook while they go and visit other websites because they want that the ads that they see are actually relevant to them. Okay, that's fine, as long as you're aware of that. But for people who are being targeted with the intention of having all of this data so that you can advertise to them better without them knowing that you're following. I think that that's, from a moral perspective, in my opinion, it's wrong. And I think it'll make people, if they're not aware of it, they might see the world kind of more narrow in a way, or encased, because they'll think that, all of these ads are what everybody else sees. Everybody else likes this too. Because they're not aware that everything that's being shown to them is targeted to them. So that might affect people's worldviews or, community views. I don't know how that's going to affect society because we haven't seen that happen yet, or we are still seeing that happen.
According to you, what kind of new technologies might empower people to regain their privacy as a basic human right?
Cryptocurrencies are the one that really comes out because people are able to control their money a bit better. The other one is just general open source software. They're able to control. Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux, had this quote: "In real open source, you control your own destiny." You then install the software that you want to use, and you'll know exactly what it does. You don't have to trust somebody else that there is no backdoor. You can check for yourself that there is no backdoor potential in that software. And so you reclaim a lot of your own independence. Of course, then you have to spend a lot of time at your work to verify it. As an owner of a Linux laptop, there's one day I remember I woke up and my file system wasn't working. And it was because of one update that I allowed it to happen, but I had to spend 3 hours to fix that. And that's the cost that I have to pay for that, but for me it's fine. But it's mine, and I can modify it as I wish. I'm not a good developer, but for people who are, they can really take better control of their lives. They can build the hardware themselves potentially, and then find open source software to make it work the way they want to. We see a lot of people doing that with Raspberry Pis today, modifying it to many things.
What is the biggest concern about Bitcoin and its relation with governments?
My concern is that governments won't spend enough time to properly understand it. They might think it does certain things, and because they get really influenced from lobbyists. And if the lobbyists that they listen to benefit by Bitcoin not moving forward, then that's what the politician's stance will be. Because that's the only information that they're being fed, negative, 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 negative. So of course, the politician, when they go propose a bill or something, or vote on it, they vote with that in mind. And that's my main concern about it, because they just simply don't have the time to properly understand this. It's taken a lot of people their full time to do it, but politicians are doing, or are supposed to, tackle a wide range of issues, so they don't really have the time to dedicate to just Bitcoin, and that goes for any other issue that's actually out there. The other problem is that, especially for governments of large countries, they're not able to account for the smaller cities around, or the fairly independent areas within their borders. Like, for example, in the United States, federal laws are passed, and then maybe it works for one state but doesn't work well for the other. That might not work quite well for Bitcoin, because, let's say, this is a theoretical example. I don't know American laws that well. If they say, okay, it's a commodity, of which they did, and let's say one state has this law about commodities and how it's taxed, and then this other state has this other thing about how it's taxed, versus if it was classified as a currency, and then the state that ruled that the tax is less, they're fine, but the ones that, let's say, tax commodities more than currencies, let's say 25% versus 0, they are severely disadvantaged. So.
Financial Action Task Force has recently obliged all global cryptocurrency exchanges share customer data. How do you think this increase of regulation will suppress business activity, or we might see the increase of privacy-oriented solutions?
So, for me, when you use a centralized exchange, you've already signed off on any sort of privacy. to the exchange. Them sharing it to another exchange is another topic. That's something that I think is a little bit of a concern. If the exchanges, have it clear that we will share your information with this, and I don't mean like 200 lines down on the terms and conditions. I mean actually there when you sign up. I think it's okay, because for me that's kind of already something I give up by using centralized exchanges. I think hopefully that this will create a bit of a push for decentralized exchanges, but I think people care more about fast trading times than decentralized exchanges. And because a lot of people now are concerned about taxes as well, so they actually sometimes want their trades to be tracked easily for them. On a decentralized exchange, it might be a bit difficult that they have to do it by hand, that they have to track it down, because there's no plugin or whatever that automatically tracks it and shoots out an Excel file that they can send to their accountant. Again, I think some regulation, because of this, it will attract a certain group of people who again want to stay in the mainstream society. So it'll help grow that. But at the same time, yes, I also agree it will push some more privacy-oriented solutions. The question is how much demand will it push? I mean, constantly I have to tell people, not your keys, not your coins. A lot of people still keep their money on exchanges, even when they're not actively trading. I mean, if you're actively trading, of course it's fine.
How do you think, why is that? Why so many people stay on centralized exchanges?
Because you can reset your password. I mean, oversimplifying with that, but it's a convenience thing. A lot of people who probably acquire Bitcoin are not that interested in the idea of owning your own currency, being responsible for it, but then also getting the benefit of being able to transact with other people directly. For a lot of people in developed countries, like let's say in Switzerland, I mean, the idea, the demand for this is not as much as, say, like in Fiji, when it was a dictatorship. The demand for peer-to-peer digital cash was so high there.
But don't you find it kind of, how to say it, weird? Because Bitcoin allows you to transact with anyone peer-to-peer without third party, and people who are already familiar with Bitcoin, some of them, prefer to keep them on centralized exchanges.
Yes.
It's nonsense.
Yes, it is. But that's just because, again, people haven't really done that shift. They like to stay in the comfort zone. And a lot of them are still in cryptocurrency, and maybe they're a bit willing, so they're not all equal in terms of wanting that comfort. But I mean, this is also one reason why a lot of the reports about Bitcoin we see on mainstream media almost always have to do with the price, or if there's criminal activity related to it, because that's what a lot of people care about. They want to be ready to sell whenever they want to. Depositing to an exchange takes some time. Some exchanges will take you over an hour. Even if you get full verifications, it will take at least 10-15 minutes. So if there's huge price action and you want to trade, you gotta wait, and that's not really convenient for a lot of people. And yeah, you need to spend some time securing your keys and doing things properly to really get the benefit of Bitcoin. And a lot of people aren't willing to spend the time to do that, or are afraid to do it themselves. Again, because we've been so used to this world where if you lose your password, all you have to do is click reset password and you're fine.
According to you, what does the cryptocurrency industry lack today?
Ooh, lacks a lot of things. As you mentioned, something good for user experience. Having to deal with this issue with people being scared to lose their private key and losing everything. I mean, we tell people about these password managers, or these open source password managers, especially ways to write it down on a piece of paper or engrave it on a piece of metal and then putting it in the safe deposit box in your own house. but that doesn't really make people comfortable. So one of the things that we were working on in Altria, that was the web wallet project that I had with a few others, we wanted to, well, we were looking into having this custodial account, that they couldn't put much money in, so that we didn't have to pay a lot of licenses or whatever, maybe just, up to $5 or something, just to get people more comfortable. And that one, they could reset their password. And about 6 months later, if they didn't reset their password, we told them, you haven't reset your password in 6 months. Would you like to try having your own private key? I don't know if that would work well. I unfortunately never got the chance to launch that. But stuff like this, to really make people comfortable with moving to the private key, being responsible for that. I think that's one thing that's really lacking. And another one is the use of mobile web apps as opposed to native apps. Apple and Google control anything that goes on their stores, on their app stores. They can say like, okay, you have to remove Monero, you have to remove Litecoin for whatever reason. And you're giving up control to Google and Apple to decide what coins you can or can't have. With a mobile web app, they don't control that, because essentially you're just opening up a web page. I understand that there were some performance concerns with regards to that, but for me, I felt that those could be easily addressed, and the benefits severely outweigh the cost. So for us also at Altria, we were working towards a mobile web app so that we would not have to answer to Apple or Google to what coins we can or can't have, what services we can or can't have. And in addition to that, a lot of people might in the future, I'm hoping, move to other mobile operating systems, like the Purism OS, which is a very privacy-oriented operating system for the phone. There's not a lot of mobile apps, like native apps for that operating system. One of the reasons why I don't have Debian on my phone is because I need to use so many apps that are native apps instead. But if they were mobile web apps, I could install them on any operating system. So it enhances people's freedom a little bit. And because we're in cryptocurrency and we're trying to push for that, I think we should get that more.
Where would you like to see Bitcoin over the next 5 years?
I'd like to see Bitcoin used more in the next 5 years. I like to, I don't think we'll get to the point yet where things will be priced in Bitcoin and kept that way, except for a few novelty things. Like the ticket to this conference, like the one Bitcoin last ticket thing. But I'd like to see people actually, trying to build stuff on top of it and use it. There's this one project, bit biased, I'm kind of mentoring them. It's called Rigtig, and they're trying to use the Bitcoin blockchain for product authentication, and trying to be very efficient with regards to the transactions that they enter into the Bitcoin blockchain, so they're not using a huge amount of space, which is good for Bitcoin users and, of course, the businesses, so that they don't have to pay huge transaction fees. Yeah, and of course, I'd like to see people using it more when they're buying and selling with each other. Parallel police is quite nice because it forces people to actually use Bitcoin. I'd like to see more places like this around. Maybe initially willing to accept cash as well, but pushing Bitcoin over using credit cards or anything like that. Because I think that's really the way for us to answer the question, what's the value in this? I can answer what the value is. Anybody, a lot of people watching this will probably be able to say what the value is in Bitcoin. But for most people who don't want to spend the time to learn and understand what Bitcoin can do, the first thing is, what can I use it for? Would it be better for me to use this than credit cards? And yeah, pass the savings on with that 3%, that 7%. Give a discount for people spending in Bitcoin instead. I think that would be better.
What is the most valuable for you about Bitcoin?
The ability to transact with other people directly without a third party. That's, for me, the most important part of it. Yeah.
Travin, thank you so much.
Thank you very much as well.
Really appreciate your time.
No problem. Happy to be here.